You were saying, no? Parang, di ba I asked you about Marikina, ba't nyo inikot? You wanted it to be a place, not just a space. Can you explain that again?
Yeah. So I noticed kasi most developers when they make something, it's really just the money aspect that they're looking at. It's like, how can I extract the most out of this property? So it's making it as cheap or as square as possible. Some naman they put in something that's it doesn't relate anything to this place. No? So I'm not gonna mention the company, pero they put something not in the Philippine context. Maybe it's something they loved when they were young, uh, and then they put it here. It's totally out of context, out of place. So they're just making it either maybe it's to serve something else like their ego. So what I wanted to do is since I have some ability to execute it in the company is to make something that is Filipino and that's something that we can be proud of. So for example, we always travel abroad and we would find these places that we wish we would have in the Philippines. So when we go to Japan, we would have a neighborhood like Daikanyama. Gusto sana natin meron ganun sa Philippines. When we go to Korea, meron Hongdae na area. We wish also na meron tayong ganun. So we can. We definitely can. It's not a matter of place, but it's a matter of will. So if we have the will to do it, kaya natin gawin yan sa places, for example, in Makinhawa or Kapitolyo. So I wanted to create places that you would remember, that you would have an emotional attachment to. And I think it's another way of doing business. It's not truly altruistic. If you create a place that people feel a connection to, they want going to, and it's not like any other place in a country, not like another copy pasted mall, then you're actually doing quite a good job of differentiating yourself. So instead of doing that at a building, why can't we do that in a district or in a neighborhood? Then it needs some sort of a changing of mindset. And I want to be the start of it. Actually, yung motto ng company namin ngayon, it's about human spaces by design. So we're looking at spaces not just to get rent or extract value, but we try to look at it on a human scale. What do people want in an area? How do people feel about it? These are special things about people they can feel. What kind of connections will they have towards this space? And definitely, we also look at the human size aspect. Baga, how can you relate to a building that's 40 stories high? It's so tall, it's not even in any human scale. Or how can you relate to a building where it's only accessible by car? So we also build spaces related to the pedestrian level, for cyclists, and still also for cars.
Based on what you were saying, yung potential, how do you know if a property is gonna yield an ROI? So, importante na aralin mo yung area, importante aralin mo yung kung okay ba yung deal and all that. Pero most of the potential lies in what you're gonna do with the property, right? And the
Yes, I
surrounding,
agree. I
no?
agree. 100%. It's going to be the creativity of what you're gonna put in there. Kasi, uh, like for example, you can go to a good area and you can put on like the crappiest building with no creativity, and even though it's a really good area, it's not gonna work. Well, you can go to a less full na area. Kumbaga, there's still more opportunities there, but also less development, and you can build something unique, and they will come. So I guess one thing we can compare is Novali. Novali is a lesson in that. Yung unang developer doon, sila
Green Eaton ba yun?
Greenfield, Greenfield, right?
Okay.
So Greenfield is under Unilab, right? So sila nauna dun, right? Sila yung naunang commercial doon, sila yung gumawa ng mga outlet. And those outlets are pretty good. Pero if you compare it to the what Ayala built there, yung Ayala speaks more to the area and what people are looking for. While the other one had an advantage as a first mover, if you look at the occupancy between the two projects, mas daming nag-rent sa Ayala. Because alam nila, people are there not to be given something that they can find in the city. They want something else. That's why uh, si Ayala put in more outdoor features into their project. So that's a koi pond, cycling lanes, bicycle parking. That's what people are looking for in that area. So if you can find out what people want even before they tell you what they want, and you give it to them, it's going to be one of the ways that you can prove to be successful. Whereas you just translate, an old model that has worked for you before in a different area, thinking that it will also work here, and then you just transplant it, most likely, once there's a better choice, people will be moving to that better choice.
Nga eh. Yung ginawa ni Ayala kasi, it's a whole community they developed it eh. It's not just one property tas Ayala. No, it's one whole area. Tapos, they're the ones that made it great.
Yeah, and to be honest, Unilab could have done that also. They have the capital and they just need to talk to the landowners there. I'm not sure if it's the kung sila Eton ba yung may-ari ng lupa sa likod nila or sila Yulo. Pero they could have talked to those people and come up with an arrangement since they were first mover. Sayang, di ba?
Eh, iba eh. Iba ang vision ng Ayala talaga. Magaling. Alright, so let's move on to the next question. So, how do you know if a certain property... Oh, wait. I don't think if I asked this directly, kasi I think you answered this indirectly in the previously, pero how do you know if a certain property will yield profit?
So, let's say you already did your study, right? And the next step would be looking at your financials now. So this is how you get to your hard math. This is where you shouldn't guesstimate the numbers anymore. And usually meron akong formula na ginagamit. I look at the potential revenue, right? And then the expenses, at least that's something that is known, right? How much ang sweldo ng accountant, how much ang sweldo ng maintenance worker, right? These things are known. And then you come up with some sort of net operations income, right? So that's your revenue minus your expense. Dapat siguro may whiteboard ako dito. Pero revenue minus expense and then your net operational profit. Dapat meron ka ma-achieve na certain amount doon kasi meron ka pang babayaran from the next. Let's say, how do you get your capital? Did you loan from a bank? What's the interest rate from a bank, right? And then what are your taxes beneath it? So those are all local to your area. So what you need to really do is put in the time to research what these amounts are. And then yung pinaka-end na amount mo, a good standard for a commercial area is between 8 to 11 years. Sabihin na natin 12. Between 8 to 12 years, dapat yung kinikita mong profit should be able to pay for the project within this timeline. So if it's less than that, right, so you're lucky if you find something less than 8. But if it's more than 13, you have to think na in 13 years, will I still be able to get good rent from this building? Will the area change? Will taste change? Or do I have an exit strategy? Let's say year 7, exit strategy. So once you've put in these factors, you can determine if it's profitable because you need to give yourself a little bit of a leeway to exit, but also you need to look at it at the long term. you need to compute that you're giving yourself enough of a leeway for mistakes along the way. So you can create a lot of mistakes. And I think you have a question related to mistakes.
Yeah, later. Sige, tanong natin yan. Grabe, no? 8 to 12 years yung... So, matagal din siya. Matagal din yung ROI.
Yes, but it's actually faster than residential.
Mas matagal pa yun. Kung ano yung pag-rent ng condo. Yung mga ganun, yung mga sales agent na, oh, you buy a condo, pa-rent mo, tapos ganyan. Mas matagal pa. Mas matagal pa yun.
Meron akong mga kaibigan sa sa condo, sa ganyan talaga yung property nila na hinahawak nila. And medyo every time they tell me it's a good vehicle for renting or rental revenue, parang I wince a little kasi parang really really try to tell me that I'm in this business. And when you're doing condos, unfortunately right now, ang condo, it's all hedging on reselling. So that's where the value of the whole condo industry is. You buy it now at a certain price, you hold on it 3 to 5 years, let's say less, maybe 3 years, then you resell it at a profit. But if you're just renting it out and you're holding it, it's gonna take you at least 20 years to recoup your investment.
Tagal. Ayoko.
Ilan taon ka na? Ilan taon na tayo?
Ayoko.
Baga, between you buying today and the time may ROI ka na, you have a college student in between you.
Kaya hayop. Ang tagal. Oo nga, no? Pag nagpaparenta, no?
Pag umaasa ka lang sa rent.
Resell
But
talaga.
there are a lot of people have made money flipping condos. That's a real business.
Okay. What are some red flags that you have when buying properties? Things that you must avoid.
All right. Philippines kasi there's a lot of peculiarities na hindi mo siya, even if you're an avid researcher, kunyari may ka manood ng YouTube videos, a lot of the videos on real estate are based in the States. And here it's a little bit different. You know, the rule of law isn't as strong. You can't just evict someone, right? Even if you have all the rights. So for me, one of the red flags talaga is kung meron siyang squatter. And that squatter can prove, right? Can prove na matagal na siya nandyan and you have not made any attempts to remove them or claim that it is your property. So when they can prove that, and usually squatters are already getting more hindi complex, but they are getting more savvy. A lot of them also know legal law. They know that you cannot evict them. You need to go through court. And when you are going through court, most likely it will involve settlement. Kumbaga, more than 50% chance you'll need to pay them to evict them. And that amount will rely usually on them if they will accept that amount. So that's one thing. I would avoid squatters, especially matagal na dyan. So if you're buying a property na mayroong squatters, make sure that it is in part of your contract to sell that the current landlord evicts those squatters themselves and erects a perimeter wall. Right? So para hindi naman bumalik agad, those things are necessary. If you're doing it yourself, you better have strong ties to the police and a friend inside City Hall. It's going to be hard. Those are voters. Right? So that's one red flag. Another one is if you're buying...
Those are voters.
Right. Sorry kung may nakikinig na politician, pero ganyan talaga ang mundo dito. Right? So, if you're a young listener, medyo mawawala yung twinkle in that eye. Kasi when you go into real estate, it's a bit like going to show business. You're gonna meet a lot of older people who want to mess you up. So another thing is if you're buying properties, especially if it's not a new one, no? It's not a turnkey project. When we say turnkey, it's ginawa siya ng a developer and then they're selling it agad. It's brand new. You want to look at what's the owner like. Is it a sole owner, or a lot of private individuals, or is it owned by a corporation? And what sort of sale are they trying to give? Are they trying to offer? So one thing na medyo mahirap for me is a corporate owned property and then they want a share sale, meaning you're not buying the land. You're buying shares of the corporation to own the land, or perhaps you buy out all the shareholders so that you retain the land, okay, and the corporation. So if you guys still follow me, um, what happens there kasi is you also inherit everything from the corporation if you buy all the shares. That means if they have bad debts, if they have legal cases, if they have labor cases, you inherit all of those. So it is up to your due diligence to to research and find out all of these things. Hindi yan trabaho ng seller na sabihin sa'yo, oh, ito meron akong kaso. Trabaho mo yun. So usually people go into that because you avoid a lot of taxes legally. You legally avoid a lot of taxes if you go through a share sale. So that's one.
So it's like a scam. It's like a sneaky scam. Na okay, we're selling you all our problems, but we're not gonna tell you what our problems are. Ganda ng lupa o bilhin mo. Parang gano'n.
Kaya kailangan meron kang magaling na lawyer at magaling na accountant. Kasama mo palagi yan pag gumagawa ka ng mga sale na ganyan.
Grabe. So, guys, we're not even done answering all the questions, but one thing I can conclude is if you're gonna get into this real estate business, yung commercial, lalo na mga big deals kasi, Kyle, di ba yung mga gantong properties, what, 30 million pataas, 100 million yung iba kasi city to yung mga ganto, di ba? If you're gonna get involved in these kinds of deals, you're gonna need a good lawyer and someone who knows the ins and outs of the titles and government practices and all that. So yeah, sige.
And since this is part of the show, you should get a good licensed broker. They really make things a little bit quicker. While the broker is not there to be your lawyer or to be your accountant, they at least know the laws that are applying to each transaction. So alam nila at least ano yung hihingiin from the seller's account, right? Another thing, if you look at the history of the Philippines, a lot of our lands are previously agri, and then passed on to their next of kin, generations. And so a lot of the land in the provinces are owned by, I would say, clans that don't know each other. They may share the same name, but they barely know each other. So that's another red flag for me kung sobrang daming owners. Because if there is one owner, kunyari, there are, let's say, a dozen owners, and then one owner, right? Nag-usap na kayo about price, talk to the 11 owners na, let's say, from Luzon to Mindanao, dyan na sila nakatira, kinausap mo na sila lahat. But there's one owner that says, no, I don't want to sell at that price. Hindi mo tutuloy yung sale na yun. So that's also a difficult thing if you have a lot of owners. So it's better if...
Ganun. Isang lupa, maraming owner, hindi magkakakilala.
Yeah. And ang pinakamaganda dyan is meron kang hawak na SPA or a Special Power of Attorney. These are waivers wherein individuals will give their right to, let's say, their relative, their next of kin, or their attorney to decide on their behalf. So let's say 4 owners will have a special power of attorney given to one other owner. But at least you talk to one and that person can decide for all 4. That's one thing you can do. I guess one story of mine is, dahil ko na experience sa ganyan, is sibling rivalry naman. So we went to Maginhawa. It's an old house. It's a nice house. It's near street, the food park, right? So we talked to the brother, and he's a former action star. like from the 80s era. Bigote, macho, ganun. And he was talking to us like, hey, I want to sell my house. It's dilapidated na. Nobody's really living in it. We look at it, nice house. I think we can do some repairs, save a little bit, and then turn it into a restaurant. So okay na. Meron na kaming price. Meron na kaming at least parang this guy's willing to sell his share.
Wait, this is for, you're gonna buy this for your company?
Yes, for the company. Right? Okay. And then the brother comes in. He's from the States. He comes in. Hey, meron palang brother. And, just talk to him. It's a done deal, sabi ng other brother. And you don't need to worry. Right? So we meet the brother, right? And then the brother tours us again in this house and tells us all about his family story. Parang, sige, be patient. Listen to all his stories kahit it's not related to your business. Yeah, he's telling us about how he became a American vet and how he fought in the war. And then he wasn't here when their mother passed away. And then he said, you know what? What price did my brother tell you? Okay, I gave him the price. And he said, you know what? Di ako masyado agree. And his brother was there who was so surprised. Parang, ha? Talaga hindi ka agree sa price? And then the brother said, sige, increase natin by 10%. And then I'll agree to the price. So parang si brother, teka, okay, if my other brother negotiates and increases the price, that means that increase also goes to me. Parang happy siya. Sige, happy. Later on, we find out, sabi ng other brother, right, the guy from the States, sabi niya, I'm sorry, I'm not selling anymore. Sabi namin, huh? You're not selling anymore, but we agreed to the higher price that you wanted, and we're gonna pay cash. Sabi niya, actually, I'm only using this to spite my brother because apparently in that story, when their mother passed away, tinago ng brother from the other brother in the States. Hindi in-invite to the funeral and all. Parang, I'm just gonna use this amount to spite my brother so that he can see that he has this amount of money that he will never touch. And that's like an amazing story of sibling rivalries. Parang kami, sige na nga, wala kami magagawa dyan. We wish you luck and I hope mag-ayos kayo ng kapatid niyo. And then contact us if you change your mind.
Tinamay ka lang sa gulo eh. Parang wala namang kinalaman sa inyo. Just wasted your time.
Yeah, wasted our time. And we could have gone through another deal. Sayang. Okay, so one more thing is, siguro avoid ka ng deals that are too good to be true. That's another red flag for me. So what are deals that are too good to be true? It's like anything where you can get a margin more than 30%. If you invest, let's say 1 peso, and then you can immediately get 30 cents more for every peso. More than that, more than 30 cents. That's a little bit fishy. Kasi it's usually hard. And it's usually hard to find a seller who doesn't know how much his property is worth. At the least, he would have asked his neighbors magkano nyo bibenta yung sa inyo so that he can compare prices. So, malabo na yan. Usually, bibenta yan kasi either madaming problema yung property or he may not even be the owner. So, beware of those things.
All right. Solid. And I know people who can relate to the squatters kasi some people who never had experience of trying to evict them, akala nila madali lang. Pero pag bili nila ng property, ang hirap pala, ang kukulit nila. Ayaw umalis eh.
Minsan, di pa yan gagalawin ng mayor. So, lalo na election season, di ba? So, asa ka na lang. They'll do anything.
Oo nga. No? Kailangan nila ng voters nga pala. Kulit eh. Ayun, so now that we're in this topic of red flags, ikaw naman, like what are some mistakes that you have made when investing in these kinds of properties?
And so we talked about elections, right? So I think one of the mistakes I did was relying on the stability of government. So while you can rely a bit on the president na meron siyang 6-year term, dahil shorter yung term ng local officials, and it's not sure naman if they're gonna win this next election, it's not good for you to rely that the current ordinances will remain in place. So as you know, when you're researching for a property, you want to find out the potential of your property. That's why you go to the local zoning official, and then you also go to the city officials to find out the rule, and also the building official. So the rules are based on the National Building Code, right? But there are specific rules that only apply to their city, and it also applies per district. So these are called ordinances. So those can change from time to time. So let's say meron kang may binili kang property at the tail end of a mayor's term or a councilor's term, and then you check if you can build a certain object. Let's say you can build a 4-story or 5-story building. Before you even start your architectural designs, let's say meron ng bagong mayor, make sure to check. And when I say check, don't just go there and ask if there are changes. You ask for a copy of the ordinances and do the research yourself. Because surprisingly, in city to city, sometimes they don't even have a copy. You will have to ask from the record section to get a copy. So sometimes, even if you ask them, even if you're friends with them, hindi nila memorize yan. You need to protect yourself and find out yourself. So that's another one.
Kasi when you build build mo na yung building, naglabas ka na ng pera, you figure out pala na you didn't meet the code, the building code, which was maybe revised versus the previous administration. Parang ganon.
So there are steps that you need to verify. Right now, even architectural plans, they cost a lot. Engineering plans are another cost. Let's say meron kang building na will cost you 100 million, right? You're looking at architectural costs of plus engineering plans, sabihin na natin mga 2 million. So malaking cost yun na you're just gonna put it into a design. So before you even tell your architect and your engineers to start designing, you need to check from there on. Pero kapag nabigyan ka na ng building permit at nagbago sila ng ordinance after that at naghuhukay ka na, usually hindi na nila ma-retroactive yet. So you're safe once you get the building permit. But not 100%. I'm saying most of the time you're safe already. So this has happened in an area we were working at. Initially, we looked at the zoning ordinance. We looked at existing buildings. They were of a certain height. And if you go to the zoning, you're allowed a certain height. And then we talked to the barangay, and then the barangay allowed the project. And then we talked to the homeowners association or the HOA, and then they loved the project. So by the time we were applying for a building permit, right? That's when they said, "Oops, hindi pala pwede to." And then we asked, "Bakit hindi pwede?" And then they said, merong sinulat na ordinance yung isang councilor and a certain vice mayor na hanggang ganito lang ang pwede nating itayo. And that rule was arbitrary. So usually, when you have ordinances, you're trying to contest an ordinance, meron siya dapat cultural significance, or at least there was a town hall meeting that was observed to get the people involved in that area to vote on this resolution. So, hindi ka pwede mag-arbitrarily magsabi na ayoko na ng bars sa area na to. Kahit commercial area na siya. Kailangan meron kang support ng mga tao in that area. And if you don't go through those steps, pwede mong i-refute yung ordinance. But we didn't go through those steps anymore kasi it's you don't want to make enemies in City Hall.
Okay, so basically, you bought a property and you had building plans for it, right? Or di nyo pa nabili?
So the property is already in the company. The architectural plans were finished. The engineering plans were finished. In fact, tapos na yung bidding stage, ready to construct na. Applying for building permit na lang.
What was your plan for this property?
So it was supposed to be a art center.
Okay.
Yeah. So culturally significant. with the support of the residents, and pasok rin siya dun sa zoning requirement. So sometimes when you follow the rules, you're still not following the rules. So you always need to double check in the Philippines.
Okay, so
Triple check. Triple
what
check.
what what stopped you was yung ordinance. Everyone else approved of it na eh.
That ordinance kasi was written by somebody very powerful. So it's like going against head of state. There's
Mm.
very little chance you'll win.
Pero ano yung
So
sinabi,
what
ano yung sinabi sa ordinance na kailangan agree lahat ng tao, 'di ba? Agree naman lahat ng tao eh.
nakasunod sa ordinance na they're limiting the height. And then when we were finally able to talk to the person who wrote it, sabi ng tao na yun na during their time abroad, they saw areas that they loved that were rustic and low height lang. So parang kami, sige, we can accept lower height is nice. Like let's say Amsterdam, maganda nga tingnan yun. But the height they were asking for was really too low. It was the height of a house. 2 stories lang yung inallow. So parang kami, with 2 stories, we can't really implement the vision we have for an art center anymore. We can't create the civic space that this area needs to revive. Whereas, sabi namin, pero official, sabi namin, what about these buildings along the street? Right in front of us, there is a 5-story. Right beside us, there's a 3-story. And in fact, we saw 3 new projects during your term that are being constructed, and they are condominiums. So why are these 8-story buildings allowed, whereas kami, nililimit kami to 2 stories? So it's a logical argument, but there's an emotional attachment to that ordinance. Kumbaga, I really want this ordinance to happen, and if these buildings were able to pass through the LGU before me, that's not my problem anymore. As long as I'm sitting here, I want to apply this vision of mine. So sometimes you can't rely on government stability. You need to play with it. You need to uh, be like bamboo, diba? You need to be flexible. So if you can't do it now, maybe you can do it later. And if you can't do it later, maybe it's time to change your plans.
Ano pa? What other mistakes?
I guess underestimating construction costs. That's one.
Ay, okay.
That's one. That's one big one. Tuwang-tuwa nga ako pag nakikita ko na like you're doing your home tours, right? And then you're showing us like the Japanese home that you went to. Yung sa harap pa lang, meron siyang digital doorbell. Kita sa loob, ano nangyayari. And then, yung wall niya, may special water-absorbing treatment. It's parang ako, those are really nice. But those are so expensive, and people don't know how expensive those things are. Either sometimes it's the upfront costs, how to install it, or later on, let's say sa bahay ni Kramer, right? Meron silang elevator doon. A gilded elevator. Yes, it baka binigay sa kanya ng sponsor niya. It might be a sponsored machine. But the cost of maintaining such a machine is so expensive. So it's always good to overestimate your cost. So my mistake, being a rookie before, was asking architects how much do they think the building costs. And I asked several architects. So architects, kahit pa paano, they have knowledge on costs. May hawak silang project, and then kahit pa paano nakikita nila yung bid prices ng mga contractors. So I thought I would be confident enough if I ask several architects. So nagtanong kami, nag-set ako ng price, and nakakatawa, yung end price namin, we were 50% over the estimated price ng architect. So imagine mo, if the project is 40 million, pagkalabas ng mga bid ng mga contractor, 60, 70, 80 million, gulat na gulat ka. So what do you do when you're at that stage na? There's no choice but to value engineer. You need to take out the things that You put in because those are wants, those are beautiful items, and you find items that are not so beautiful, but they will work with your vision pa rin. So, a lot of times, hindi naman yan napapansin ng mga tao. As I said, you don't want to cheapen your product and give your clients the cheapest product. But sometimes they can't tell naman which is high-end and which is mid-end item. So, kung meron kang alam sa mga ganyang materials, you can do those things. And kahit pa paano, masa-salvage mo pa rin yung cost mo to an acceptable price. So that was my stake. So next time, I would learn to ask a contractor first.
Di lang architect.
Contractor na kaibigan mo na hindi magbibid sa plano. Yan ang dapat tanungin.
Kasi bias kasi pag magbibid sa plan.
Oo. Sabihin nila, mura na yan. Like, okay na yung presyo ko. Or pareho na to dun sa project na ginawa ko. You don't know.
So, review nga natin yun. So what the first mistake was yung government, right? Not yung
government stability.
Yeah, government stability. The second was, alam ko the last one you said was obviously construction cost, underestimating construction cost. But then I forgot the second one.
It's about I guess generally being about too trusting. I think that's a general mistake na you that an expert would know everything about their field. But in our time now, all of these experts are very specialized. That's how we're able to become so efficient. So if you want to get a picture as a business developer or investor or as a businessman, you need to compile all the opinions of several experts in order to reveal the bigger picture. So if you're going to anything, make sure you consult with many people. I think generally this encompasses all my mistakes na I trusted or I wasn't able to build the whole picture, relying instead on several points of view and then assuming it was reflective of the whole thing.
Okay. All right. Ito. This one. But we talked about the red flags. So, this is just an additional. So, I don't know if you prepared for this, but kung you look at the property, ano yung mga wow factor na, ito, mukhang okay ito Parang ganun. Like, do you have ones in mind?
Depende yun Pero let's say you're looking at a property na meron siyang structure na nakalagay. Don't look at the facade. Don't look at the finishing. Usually, kailangan tingnan mo yung structure. When I say structure, yung columns, yung beams, yung foundation. Sometimes napapangitan tayo sa mga project, sa mga binibenta because from the facade, parang pangit siya. Luma na yung kahoy, yung ilaw, busted na siya. Kumbaga, wala na nakatira dito for a long time. So, I guess one big wow factor for me if it's well built. A well-built structure will really serve you for a long, long time. Kasi if it's well-built, you're actually reducing a lot of the maintenance costs na headache yan as a property owner. And when you have a well-built structure, mabilis na naman i-modify yan Right? Mabilis i-modify it. You don't need to think if it's 10 years old or 15 or 20. If you have an expert or if you have knowledge on this, if you see that the skeletons of the structure are good, and then they're selling it at a really low price, then these are really good buys. Because you can, number one, if it's a house, you can fix it up, right? You can go to the depot, pick up some new tiles, new lights, new paint, flip it, right? After you renovate it for 8 months, you flip it. Malaki kagad yung gain mo na ganyan. Because a lot of people don't want to do the work. Don't want to do the research. If it's a older building, commercial, right? Wala siyang tenants, sarado lahat, lugi, parang yung owner, ayaw na niya, binibenta niya. Sometimes kasi, matanda na yung owner, kaya ayaw na nila tingnan. Ayaw na nila i-handle. Kumbaga, they're graduate na sila dyan, they want to retire. So these are also good deals that I look at. So mapapawaw ka if you can imagine, you close your eyes, you imagine if I put in the work here, I put in the blood, sweat, and tears, can I make this look good? And usually the question of can I make this look good is always related to okay ba yung structure niya? Is it sound? Is the foundation, columns, the beams, they're all in good condition? Then yes, kaya yan. And ito yung advice ko for most people starting out. Like if it's kung hindi kayo titingin ng lumang bahay, hindi kayo titingin ng lumang building, tumingin kayo ng mga lumang condos, right? Yung lumang condos, they actually provide a lot of value. You just need to fix it up. But ano bang difference ng new condo and an old condo? A new condo is more expensive kasi the land has become more expensive. Whereas yung old condo mo, yes, meron silang, what you're looking at is the seller will be pricing in the years na hawak nila yung property. But they'll never price it as good as a brand new condo. And yet, you know naman, if you put in the work, you'll be spending way less than the amount that you can get up if you want to flip that property.
Wait, for the condo, this is flipping it? You're talking about flipping it?
Flipping it, renting it out. Kasi you wanna, I think, to real estate, avoid things that glitter. Yung kumbaga, the shiny new things, like, let's say, Ayala Premier, right? The high-end century condos. For me, iwas ako dyan. Kasi yung mga premier na yan, mga luxury items, they're usually being sold as a vehicle to invest cash. Kasi these are really rich people. They just want to put their cash somewhere. They don't want to put it in the bank. They just want to put it somewhere. They put it in something crazy, like a yacht or a condo. But if you're a regular Joe, you're a businessman. You're in it. You're in real estate to make money. Then you need to avoid all of these good-looking things. Go to the less than ideal neighborhoods. Look at the properties that are not in perfect condition. These are, for me, the most interesting ones.
Putik, that sounds so exciting. And gets ko yun yung nakakatamad tignan. Kasi ako, when people tell me, Jobby, film mo tong house na to, tapos pinakita yung picture sa akin, grabe, pag ayaw ko yung bahay, parang tinatamad nga ako eh. Pero, when you told me that the good deals are like, yung pangit, yung facade, pero yung structure ng tibay. Tapos, ang gagawin mo, i-envision mo, kung kaya ko ba to. That sounds so exciting. Parang builder talaga na. Yeah, that sounds cool. So that's basically what you do. That's like,
Kung kaya, yeah, that's what I do. That's what I look for. And we also have, if you're looking at land naman, the wow factor for me is usually the neighborhood. If the neighborhood has a story, right? It has residents who have lived there for a long time. Those are interesting. Like, as I said nga, Poblacion was a really interesting place because it has actual history. It's an old place. The people there are interesting and they have ties to the place. They have an emotional tie to the place. Parang lumaki ako dyan ako tumanda, or parang I've had my first experience there. These are neighborhoods na parang mapapawaw ka.
Bakit ganun? Bakit mas okay na investment ang lupa pag ganun ang context? Interesting, may attachment, bakit ganun?
For me, it's simply recall. It's a product recall. And targeting, di ba? We try to create an emotional attachment dun sa product natin. Sobrang uso sa mga commercials ngayon, like yung insurance na mapapaiyak ka, yung product na mabibigyan ka ng confidence. So these are the things that you're looking out for. So if you build a building, you have a property in an area that has an emotional attachment to somebody out there, you can also not really get, but you can also make use of that attachment for your building. So an example in Manila would be Manila itself, right? Dun sa ginagawa ni Mayor Isko. what he's doing is really brilliant, because what he's doing is like, okay, we're gonna double down on the heritage of Manila. If ang past mayor, ang focus niya is, let's reclaim land, let's keep on reclaiming the bay, let's build these casino islands, right? Let's build a glittering new city. Opposite naman tong current mayor. Let's go to these really old places. The oldest Chinatown in the world is in Binondo. Let's go to Jones Bridge. Let's go to the Monument of Bonifacio. And let's really spruce it up. Kasi ang he's a brilliant man. Alam niya na the true value of Manila is in the cultural heritage. If I can rebrand Manila and focus
guys, I
on
hope
that.
you enjoyed that. I hope you got some value out of that video. If you have any other questions regarding real estate, construction, homes, please comment them in the comment section down below, because what I'm doing is I'm gathering all those questions and I'm going to bring in people who can answer them. I'm gonna be interviewing a lot more people, a lot more of these professionals. So please, kung may mga tanong kayo, comment in the comment section down below and you will see those questions answered. So again, if you enjoyed that video, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell so that when I upload another house tour or an interview, you get to see them as soon as it's uploaded. Thank you and God bless. Okay, so follow-up question.